Let's square off and gleam the cube with some great Nintendo GameCube games. Joystick. The Nintendo GameCube was a totally awesome, epic video game system. Many gamers incorrectly assumed it was just for kids due to its compact design that included a handle and had a colorful, mostly purple case and brightly colored controller buttons, but it was powerful and ran a ton of fun, creative games. The GameCube was the last time that Nintendo tried to compete with sheer graphical power, and it could play cutting-edge games of the day. Nintendo did so many good things with it. However, the GameCube just did not catch on as Nintendo had hoped. I'm going to go over what I consider the 12 essential Nintendo GameCube games that I recommend that you start with, and then I'll go over the GameCube's awesome hardware. There are a ton of great games for the GameCube, and in the future, I'll make a video on 12 more essential GameCube games. So, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel so you don't miss out. Now, on to the games! Super Mario Sunshine. Super Mario Sunshine on the Nintendo GameCube is the first Mario platform game after the groundbreaking jump to 3D in 1996's Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64. Instead of being set in the Mushroom Kingdom, the game follows Mario and pals as they embark on a tropical vacation on Delfino Island, only to find out that it was attacked by an evil goo-covered imposter Mario who polluted the island with mud, goo, and slime. The Delfino Island folk enlist Mario to clear up the mess by giving him the Flood Backpack. The big part of Sunshine's brilliance lies in its unique gameplay mechanics with the Flood Backpack, a combination hydro jetpack and water pump. It adds a refreshing twist to Mario 3D platforming. Running and soaring through levels, blasting goop, and solving water-based puzzles provides a distinct, enjoyable experience. The tropical setting is loaded with vibrant colors and catchy tunes. Sunshine's biggest hurdle lies in its sudden, uneven difficulty spike. While some parts offer a delightful, accessible platforming, others head straight into frustrating territory requiring split-second timing and no margin of error. Super Mario Sunshine is a visually stunning game with innovative mechanics, but its uneven difficulty is a bit shocking at times, but Delfino Island is well worth a visit. Only recently that Nintendo made this game available on the Nintendo Switch in the Super Mario 3D All-Star Collection, but the original way to enjoy it is on Nintendo GameCube. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Much like the rest of the GameCube experience, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker was a bit controversial when it was released, but it has gone on to be beloved by fans. When Nintendo showed off the GameCube hardware for the first time at the Space World trade show, they did so by showing a realistically rendered adult Link fighting Ganon. People assumed that this is what the next Legend of Zelda game was going to look like. Then there was a ton of kvetching and gnashing of teeth when they finally unveiled The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker with its cel-shaded art style. This is a graphic technique where the world and characters are constructed using 3D polygons, and then the rendering engine uses a non-realistic cartoon shader to draw the world to create a heavy stylized look and feel. The other major game to do this beforehand was Sega's Jet Set Radio, also known as Jet Grind Radio, but internet nerds complained and called this game Zelda, combining the terms cartoon cells and Zelda. Nintendo did this to try to give The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker more of a feeling of hand-drawn anime. specifically children's anime. Ironically, over the years, using 3D graphics with cel shaders has become a core part of most modern anime production, and now they're using 3D computer graphics to make anime sort of feel like video games that were trying to feel like hand-drawn anime. Computer graphics changes aside, The Wind Waker is a unique departure from the previous series because it is not set in the land of Hyrule, but rather it is a journey across the Great Sea. Link grows up on a series of islands, and there's a strong Pacific Islander influence. It seems like instead of taking the mountains surrounding Kyoto as an inspiration, they took the many islands surrounding Japan. The Wind Waker feels more like Okinawa. You encounter a lady pirate by the name of Tetra, who has a bit of a secret past that I will let you discover. You also find a magical dragon boat that you can talk to and use to traverse the Great Sea and go between various islands. In classic Legend of Zelda style, there are intricate dungeons with challenging puzzles and epic boss fights. It is another epic hero's journey of the young boy named Link growing into the legendary hero and saving the land. The controls in this game seem tailor-made for the GameCube controller, and it really has a natural ergonomic feel. This game would later go on to influence Legend of Zelda games such as Breath of the Wild, and there is also an HD remaster of this game on the Wii U. But many people think that the best way to play this game is on the GameCube. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker proves that Nintendo knows what they're doing when it comes to the Legend of Zelda games. It's okay if they want to take the series in a slightly different direction, it's for the better. Mario Kart Double Dash. Mario Kart Double Dash is an excellent addition to the Mario Kart series and builds on the graphical strength of the Nintendo GameCube. It expands upon Mario Kart 64 and has teams of 2 Mario characters riding in tandem by having the drivers switch out by swapping positions mid-race. There are a ton of colorful tracks with new locations from all over the Mario game universe. The animation is lush and the colors are vibrant, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. It allows for split-screen modes where you can face off against your friends by splitting the screen in half, or in quarters with up to 4 human players racing against each other. There is also LAN connectivity should you and your friends have multiple GameCubes, an Ethernet LAN switch, and multiple Nintendo GameCube high-speed networking adapters. Then you can throw a Mario Kart LAN party and kick it 90s style, despite the game coming out in 2003. With Mario Kart Double Dash, Nintendo took what was working with the Mario Kart series and expanded upon it. It is the logical evolution from this to Mario Kart on the Wii, the Wii U, and finally the Switch. Double Dash offers some of the best on-the-couch multiplayer action that you can get on the GameCube. It is a heck of a lot of fun. This game is exactly why the GameCube has 4 controller ports built into the system. F-Zero GX. What if I were to tell you that in 2003, Sega's Amusement Vision division partnered with Nintendo to make F-Zero GX, a high-speed F-Zero racing game for both the Nintendo GameCube as well as F-Zero AX for Sega's arcade systems using Nintendo's Triforce hardware that was based on the GameCube. It was just 2 years prior that Nintendo and Sega had buried the hatchet after decades of video game console rivalry, and now here they were putting out joint games. It didn't start with Sonic and Smash Bros. Or Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, but right here with F-Zero GX. Unfortunately, this is one of the last F-Zero games made by Nintendo, and is also considered to be the best. It has incredibly fast racing, lush, awesome-looking tracks, high acceleration, gorgeous, crazy 60 frames per second gameplay using snaking and drifting as racing game mechanics. There is a story mode as Captain Falcon races through 9 chapters, completing various missions. The Grand Prix mode is a legendary amount of high-speed Nintendo racing fun. It is a balance of risk and reward, as the boost drains your shield energy but gives you an incredible boost of speed, so you're always balancing between getting taken over and blowing up. It delivers an unparalleled sense of speed and challenge. The art style blends futuristic technology with a retro game aesthetic to create an incredible, striking video game racing world. I'm glad that F-Zero would get another game on the Game Boy Advance, and they would eventually make F-Zero 99 on the Switch, but we have been long overdue for an F-Zero racing game on Nintendo hardware. If they would just make a straight port of F-Zero GX to the Nintendo Switch, it would be amazing. But until that day, you need to get yourself a copy of F-Zero GX for the GameCube. Soul Calibur 2. Namco's Soul Calibur 2 is a sequel to a sequel, and it's one of the funnest 3D fighting games ever made. The original Soul Calibur only had a home release on the Sega Dreamcast, and Soul Calibur 2 had versions on the PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, and the Nintendo GameCube. They created bonus characters that were unique for each version of the game. The PlayStation 2 got Heihachi from the Tekken series, and the Xbox got Spawn from the comics, and the GameCube got Link from The Legend of Zelda. Playing Link in a violent 3D fighting game is a blast. The fighting is fast and fluid and uses a combination of timing and techniques. Victory and defeat comes from being able to be faster than your opponent, block their actions, and react quicker. The graphics are gorgeous and are still super impressive in 2024, as they were in 2003, 21 years later, and this game still looks great. There is a huge roster of warriors, each with their own weapon style and animations. In Weapon Master mode, it encourages you to replay it over and over again and unlock new stuff. Over the years, I've probably spent quite a bit of time playing this game with my friend Noah, and he will accuse me of being a filthy Mitsurugi button masher who is without honor. But in typical Japanese fighting game fashion, there is usually a main character who's a little overpowered. I will bring the beatdown with a katana blade. If you ask me, Soul Calibur 2 was the best addition to the Soul Calibur series, and the best version of the best game was on the Nintendo GameCube. Viewtiful Joe. Capcom has been a major developer of Nintendo games on all of their platforms over the years, and when it came to the Nintendo GameCube, Capcom got behind the GameCube in a major way and released a series of major, quote, GameCube exclusives such as Resident Evil Remake, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 4, PN03, and Viewtiful Joe. When the Nintendo GameCube turned out not to dominate the video game console market as much as Capcom and Nintendo had hoped, Capcom decided to bring many of these so-called GameCube exclusive games to other platforms, such as the PlayStation 2. Viewtiful Joe is an entirely new game series that featured 3D characters in side-scrolling martial arts combat and platforming that featured cel-shaded, stylized computer graphics that delivered a high-contrast manga shonen anime aesthetic. The story and setting focuses on Super Sentai and Tokusatsu, which are genres of costumed superheroes in an over-top martial arts action. If you think that sounds a bit like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, then pat yourself on the back. You, much like Captain America, got that cultural reference. When our hero Joe transformed into his super-powered costume self, he has the ability to manipulate time by speeding it up or slowing down the action. This is essential to combat various enemies and to overcome puzzles in the environment. This features over-the-top action, zany comedy, and a stark, memorable art style, and it has quite a lot of 90s attitude. I've always had a soft spot for the Viewtiful Joe games, and I hope that one day they would at least make an HD remaster collection, if not a new entry into the series. I love it when experienced game developers use the opportunity of getting a new generation of hardware to make games that were not possible on the prior generations of tech. This game would later go on to influence the works of Platinum Games. Viewtiful Joe is a lot of fun, and it is full of fast-paced, zany GameCube action. It later came to the PlayStation 2, but it was first and foremost on the GameCube. Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader. Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader is the follow-up to the Nintendo 64 Rogue Squadron game, also made by Ace flying game developer Factor 5. As a launch title for the Nintendo GameCube, it helped show just what the system was capable of. They set out to recreate the experience of the visuals of the epic space battles from the Star Wars movie series, and they delivered an incredible, visually impressive experience utilizing a ton of on-screen geometry, advanced lighting and shaders, and detailed texture maps and next-level audio for voice and sound effects and music. The story surrounds the events of the movies, but it also greatly expands upon the various battles between the Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance between the movie series. They also included a ton of video and audio clips from the movies, as well as dialogue created by some very convincing actors that blended seamlessly with the Star Wars film data. They followed up with a sequel, also on the GameCube, and it really showed what was possible on Nintendo's GameCube hardware, and that they were able to deliver an impressive action AAA title that was better looking and better playing than the competitors on other platforms. Strangely, this great game was never released in Japan, but only in Europe and North America. I love Star Wars, I love Nintendo games, and I absolutely love the Star Wars Rogue Squadron series. Trust your instincts. Use the Force. Get Rogue Squadron 2 for GameCube. And may the Force be with you. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. Rather than making some Sonic the Hedgehog games, Sonic Team set out to make another quirky, charming console exclusive 3D platformer for the Nintendo GameCube using a new IP. Our hero, Billy Hatcher, is a young bird enthusiast who stumbles upon a giant egg who gives him magical powers to grow and hatch other giant bird eggs to hatch magical creatures out of. A cartoon realm has been taken over by evil crows, and our bird-based hero is out to defeat them and set things right. The gameplay centers around rolling around giant eggs and then leveling them up and finally hatching them using a magical rooster call. The different eggs will hatch different creatures which give you the power to solve many environmental puzzles. It is bright, whimsical, and colorful, and has a lot of wacky Sega fun, but it is not without a pretty steep difficulty curve that sneaks up on you. This is just 2 years after Nintendo and Sega shook hands as Sega decided to embrace a multi-platform approach. Even as I make this video, Microsoft is rumored to imminently announce that they may be bringing Xbox exclusive game series to competitive platforms. So if Nintendo and Sega can get along, who knows? Billy the Hatcher and the Giant Egg is a vastly underappreciated wacky cartoon Sega game that is absolutely worth checking out on the Nintendo GameCube. Super Smash Bros. Melee. I finally got to the Nintendo fighting game that is so beloved by its fans that I'm surprised that they haven't been complaining in the comments that I didn't have it higher on this list or sooner in this video. Super Smash Bros. Melee is a sequel to Nintendo's beloved brawler that got its start on the Nintendo 64 but got a massive graphical upgrade on the GameCube. It covers an expanded roster of Nintendo characters from a swath of Nintendo's history. The game series is derided by other fighting game fans who refer to it as a fighting game for kids that relies on button mashing. But Melee has some surprisingly deep gameplay mechanics such as wave dashing and aerial combos. This entry in the game series also features Adventure Mode, which features a ton of unique challenges and several metric tons of unlockables. The GameCube also delivered a massive graphical upgrade over the Nintendo 64 hardware, and it would set the baseline for graphics and gameplay expectations for the series moving forward. To many uber Super Smash Bros. Fans, this is the game that got them hooked on the series, and it has a special place in their fanatic Nintendo fighting game hearts. Luigi's Mansion. The Nintendo GameCube was one of the few Nintendo game systems that did not have a Super Mario game close to its launch. Instead, they had Luigi's Mansion. This game stars Luigi, who wins a mansion in a contest only to find out that it is inhabited by many spooky ghosts and his brother Mario is mysteriously trapped inside. So Luigi has to overcome his fear and become the hero for the game. He teams up with a wacky professor who has created a ghost-sucking vacuum cleaner that he gives Luigi to combat the various ghosts. This is Nintendo's take on the survival horror genre, but it is cartoony and cute. The graphics are surprisingly good and feature really lush interactive lighting and detailed environments. You also have to search for hidden keys, hidden coins, and you can upgrade your vacuum cleaner and uncover portraits of the mansion's former residents to unlock new areas. The game's graphics are actually pretty darn good, and this was a pretty impressive showcase for what the Nintendo GameCube could do back in the day. You have to hand it to Nintendo that they had the guts to launch a new game system showcasing the game with Luigi instead of Mario. Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters Melee. Pipeworks Software from Eugene, Oregon developed one of the best Godzilla games ever made, starring 13 beloved Toho Daikaiju giant monsters such as Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, and many more. The gameplay is sort of a wrestling game set in very destructible, expansive city environments that take place around the world. It is mostly one-on-one combat, but you can pick up your enemies and slam them into buildings, and also pick up buildings and slam them into your enemies. And you can utilize a variety of iconic attacks from decades of previous Godzilla movies. There are some really dank, rare, deep cuts that they are going with from the Toho movies in this game. The combat is a bit chaotic, but it's always fun. It is okay to play against the computer, but it really shines when you play this game against other Godzilla fans. I used to play this game with my friend Noah, and we would see who could smash each other into the Space Needle in Seattle. It's not the most in-depth fighting game ever made, but it is a heck of a lot of fun and is an absolutely essential GameCube game in my book. PN03. Capcom's PN03 is a stylistically impressive action game that was pretty groundbreaking when it was released in 2003. It features a pretty sensual, painfully cool female hero in a skin-tight combat suit who dances through the combat as you strategically and rhythmically shoot a variety of robot foes. The environments are almost entirely monochromatic, which gives it a space-age Stanley Kubrick-like aesthetic, but the environment is pretty detailed with clean lines and dynamic lighting. One common complaint that some people have with this game is that our heroine can't run and shoot at the same time, but I think it actually gives it more of an old arcade game feel. This picks up from the stylistic combat of the Devil May Cry series, and it would go on to influence later games like the Bayonetta series. Especially the idea of having an incredibly well-animated female protagonist dance her way through waves and waves of bad guy plebs. It has deliberate pacing and lacks many traditional shooter elements, but it makes up for it as a very unique, very fresh third-person action game. This was an indie game made by a major developer before indie games were a thing. It is a little sad that Capcom hasn't revisited this game or brought it to modern platforms, but if you are collecting for Nintendo GameCube, then you deserve it to yourself to check out PN03. Nintendo GameCube Hardware. The GameCube was Nintendo's last attempt at a traditional vanilla video game console, meaning a so-called regular video game console that was played on a TV and didn't have any additional screens, different control mechanisms, and gameplay methodologies that were significantly different than their contemporary competitors. It launched in fall of 2001 with a very affordable price of $199. The GameCube only sold 21.74 million consoles worldwide, in part to the fact that Nintendo faced increasing competition not only from Sony with their PlayStation 2, 155 million consoles sold worldwide, but from the original Microsoft Xbox, 24 million consoles sold worldwide. Sega had already dropped out of the console market by the time that the GameCube launched in 2001. Nintendo would then pivot to designing less powerful consoles that embraced creative ways of playing games that would lead to the success with the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Switch, but unfortunately not the Wii U. GPU and CPU. The GameCube actually started a technical lineage that would continue into the Nintendo Wii and Wii U. Both were direct technical descendants of the GameCube with ATI GPUs and PowerPC CPUs. Nintendo partnered with a new company called ArtX that was made up of former Silicon Graphics engineers that had previously worked on the Nintendo 64. They developed a graphics processor for the GameCube codenamed Flipper that ran at 162 MHz with 128-bit architecture before the company was purchased by ATI. There was an ATI graphics logo on the GameCube, but it had a graphics architecture which was entirely separate from ATI's graphics chips of the time. Not only could the Nintendo GameCube draw a heck of a lot of polygons, it could run shaders with image processing functions such as volumetric fog, heat haze, motion blurs, bloom, sub-pixel anti-aliasing, and per-vertex lighting and cell shading. It did more than just draw a lot of stuff. It could make the stuff that it drew look great at the same time. Some GameCube games could take advantage of progressive scan, widescreen aspect ratios, and component video. And many GameCube systems had a digital out port, but the system also works great on a CRT TV and has excellent S-video output. Nintendo partnered with IBM, who produced a 32-bit PowerPC-based CPU codenamed Gekko that ran at 486 MHz. The GameCube system was more powerful than the PlayStation 2 and almost as graphically powerful as the original Xbox. Game developers found that it was easy to program for, and they could make multi-platform games on all three systems, and often the GameCube version would be graphically superior or just as good as the Xbox version. Controllers. The Nintendo GameCube had a great ergonomic controller with built-in rumble, 2 analog sticks, comfortable analog triggers, and different sized button layout that was a little controversial at the time, but it would eventually become a fan favorite, especially with Super Smash Bros. Fans. Nintendo would also be the first to develop an official high-speed 2.4 GHz wireless controller called the Wavebird. They also made the Game Boy player for the GameCube that was adapted from a Game Boy Advance motherboard that would allow Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games to be played on a TV using native hardware without hardware emulation. Optical drives. Nintendo partnered with Panasonic for the development of the GameCube Optical drive, which ran a custom-sized DVD-based optical disc that could store 1.5 gigabytes of data. Panasonic would later go on to make their own line of officially licensed DVD-compatible hybrid GameCube systems called the Panasonic Q. However, Nintendo was more than a little disappointed that they were not able to combat the Sony PlayStation 2, which was an absolute juggernaut that outsold the GameCube 7-1. The PlayStation 2 could play DVDs, and that was a very, very, very big deal at the time. It is hard to imagine this now, but being able to play DVDs was a killer app for the PlayStation 2, since at the time, standalone DVD players were more expensive than the PlayStation 2, and many people bought a PlayStation 2 just to play DVDs. It's strange nowadays that you can walk into a thrift store or Goodwill and they will literally have a pile of DVD players for about $5 a piece. This was Nintendo's first game system with an optical drive, and they chose a proprietary miniature disc format, which there is absolutely no commercially available blank media for. Pirates could not make bootleg GameCube discs since there were no blank discs that would fit the dimensions of the GameCube disc drive. As a result, the GameCube was not pirated successfully during its commercial run, and the ability to run GameCube games off SD cards is a very recent development. Online woes. Nintendo developed an analog phone modem and broadband adapter with Ethernet for the GameCube, then it would go on to almost completely ignore them. They made the hardware, but they didn't bother to put together any kind of online infrastructure and left individual game developers to do the hard work themselves. Ironically, Sega would get the most use out of the GameCube broadband adapter with Phantasy Star Online. A used broadband adapter can often be more expensive than a GameCube these days. Nintendo gave the passing impression that they really didn't understand what to do with the internet and weren't enthusiastic about having the GameCube online. It wasn't until Microsoft launched Xbox Live and really showed what an online network for a video game console could look like. Even with later consoles such as the Wii and the Nintendo DS, Nintendo's online strategy was well behind the competition. And if you disagree, then post your Nintendo friend codes down in the comments. The Nintendo Switch Online service is great now, but it took Nintendo over a decade and a half of not getting the internet to get there. Nintendo's passive, questionable internet approach started with the GameCube. GameCube Backwards Compatible Nintendo Wii systems. You don't even need to get a Nintendo GameCube to enjoy GameCube games. All of the original Nintendo Wii system model, RVL001, were backwards compatible with GameCube discs, and you can tell a backwards compatible Wii system because it will have GameCube controller ports and memory card slots on the top of the system. Later Wii units and the Wii Mini dropped GameCube support. It's also easier to get Wii component cables than official GameCube component cables. It only had lukewarm success during its initial run, but the GameCube has been enjoying a huge resurgence among collectors, and GameCube games have been skyrocketing in price recently. The Nintendo GameCube was the last time that Nintendo tried to compete with a game system that was just as powerful or more powerful than the competition. Later systems such as the Nintendo Switch, the Wii, the Wii U, the DS, and the 3DS all tried to use moderately powered hardware that utilized different approaches to create different gameplay experiences through unique control interfaces and displays. It was the commercial failure of the GameCube that helped inspire Nintendo to be different and led to the Wii and the Switch systems that outsold their competitors from Sony and Microsoft by far. Well, these essential game video series have been fun to do, but they're a lot of work. From now on, I'm going to go back to doing shorter videos on a variety of different subjects before going back to this series, but I do plan on getting back to it very soon and make videos covering essential games for the NES, both Nintendo and third-party, Famicom Disk System, TurboGrafx-16, TurboGrafx CD, Sega Master System, Sega Saturn, PC Engine CD, Super Graphics, Nintendo DS, 3DS, ColecoVision, PS2, PS3, and others. And I also left off a ton of great GameCube games and will expand on this in the future. If I left off your favorite GameCube games, then let me know down in the comments. I have a whole variety of other videos that I'm working on, so please subscribe so you don't miss them. This is 8-Bit Joystick. Stay awesome. Play retro.